He was known as the voice of Indian football, and I'm sure he'll be known as that forever. Novy Kapadia was not just a journalist, he was not just a commentator. Novy Kapadia was someone who loved football dearly, more than me, more than you. Welcome to the Totally Indian Football Show. I'm your host Siju, and I have with me Rahul Sengupta. Rahul, what according to you or how would you describe Novy Kapadia and his love for football?
Hey, good evening, Siju. It's on the onset very sad loss for Indian football. Novy Kapadia actually, like you rightly said, is the voice of Indian football. Everyone called him as the encyclopedia for football. He has written multiple books, not just in football as well as cricket. Uh, here was this one person who loved Indian football despite knowing that Indian football probably didn't love him back, that strong enough, Sadly, he spent his last few days and months completely on by himself. He had some serious health conditions which restricted his mobility. There were one of guests from the fraternity who would just go and visit him, but it was really sad that he was bedridden and it was not very ideal situation, and ultimately everything comes to an end, and here was this man who loved Indian football till his last breath probably, and the fraternity will miss him, and lots of memories linked to Novy Kapadia. People like me who grew up following Kolkata derbies, following football with the limited coverage we used to have. Novy Kapadia's voice was something which was the most common aspect we could hear. So it's definitely a very sad loss for Indian football, and will miss him dearly.
Rightly put there, Rahul. And today's episode was supposed to be, or we rather want to do it as a derby special because we're all looking forward to ATKMB versus East Bengal on the 27th. But with this unfortunate demise that took Novy Kapadia away from us, away from Indian football, definitely asks us to right now talk about him or celebrate his life rather. And I think personal regret for me would be maybe not able to covering him or not able to talk to him or get him on the show or probably have a word with him regarding humans of Indian football, because if you ask me personally, he is the OG human of Indian football and nobody else deserves that title. So how will he be speak about Derby without talking about Novi's contribution towards Derby games? And Rahul, you're a East Bengal fan. How do you, what is there any, in your memories? I'm sure there would be some lines from Novi's contribution or towards the commentary during his time at the, Derby games. And what would you want to share with us if there is any?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm finding difficult to find words to, comprehend properly to talk about Novy Kapadia and what all he has done towards Indian football and specifically Kolkata derbies. I mean, to start off with, let me give you a slice of reality how we got introduced to football. Back in those days, we used to have very limited TV channels on air. So the earliest of memories I have about Kolkata Derby was listening to radio commentary with my grandfather. That's how we got integrated to the sports and the derby and the club East Bengal that my family supports traditionally over the years and over the generations. Then we transcended to TV, and by that time, we were having Doordarshan and DD Sports as a coverage. I was a little grown up going to school, so I was able to understand how sports is viewed in India or how football is delivered over television, and it was a delight to catch a glimpse of our favorite teams playing in the derby. Uh, how Novi Kapadia struck balance was that definitely there was something different about his voice to start off with. Here, Novi, was not just a football commentator. He actually came from a good family. He had received formal education from St. Stephen's College in Delhi, which is regarded as one of the most prestigious institutions in the country. So his command over language was brilliant. And for a fan who's watching sports in English commentary in the television, definitely, I was impressed by the command of the language, because Before that, I was used to listening to Bengali commentary on the radio. So this was something new. Yet, when I say that, it was English commentary, it was new for us. He ensured that the level of commentary, he used terms very simple to, describe things. Just to give you a slight example, my grandfather, towards his last few days, he was also ailing. He had completely lost eyesight, and he, kind of only enjoyed the commentary aspect of it. And my grandfather could identify, yes, it's Novy Kapadia, because he has been listening to Novy Kapadia from the early 90s that I'm talking about. And he's one person, it's not just about football or derby, he's also covering Olympics, Asian Games. So he was right a sports journalist of sorts with, bank of knowledge, trivias, and facts which we used to love a lot. Coming back to Derby, I think what Novy Kapadia added was the human touch. I mean, he definitely was one of the earliest English commentators who described the game brilliantly. You were asking me about some of the iconic words or something. Obviously, I will not be able to be as good as him, but there was this one small aspect about this special match that we always go back to. That is the 1997 Federation Cup semi-finals. It was a match between East Bengal and Mohun Bagan. It was semi-finals. Salgaonkar was to play the other. They were the other finalists. So whoever wins goes to play the final. So it was definitely a very important do or die knockout match, and the build up to the match was brilliant, right? There was media coverage all around every time on the newspaper. I remember I was a very small child. All I could care about was the pictures that came out in the newspaper, and they had big bold pictures of both the clubs doing the last bit of training sessions on the day of the match. So that shows the level of coverage. Indian football and Kolkata derby used to organically be in page one of the newspaper, and nobody had to buy media to be up featured on the newspapers back then. So what happened in that match is East Bengal kind of thrashed Mohun Bagan, and that's why it is special for me as a East Bengal fan. So ultimately, East Bengal won the match 4-1, and the arrival of Baichung Bhutia, right? He scored a hat trick in the derby, and he announced his arrival of sorts. And as you know, that West Bengal is primarily divided into East Bengal and Mohun Bagan. So if you scored a hat trick for East Bengal, there's half the population of West Bengal who are already treating you as an idol. So that happened in that match, and I think some of the iconic things about that match is it was very loud. I remember, because there were 1,30,000 plus people. There were many people who came in without tickets even. So it was naturally very loud. You could hear a lot of background noises, firecrackers going around. People were shouting, howling, probably abusing on the ground, and you could hear some of it from those days of commentary and the mic feed that we used to get at that time. But still, it was the command over English and the high pitched voice of Novy Kapadia. He would shout at the top of his voice to explain a scenario in the match. That brought in a lot of energy into the entire coverage. And I remember there was this third goal that East Bengal scored. There was basically a grounded cross from this player called Najibul Haq, and Baichung Bhutia was at the receiving end, and he basically could have finished it at one go, but he received the ball, trapped the ball, took on one defender, and then finished the goal. And it was anxious moments for us, right? Because we are not used to very skillful strikers who would actually keep hold of the ball within the penalty box, dribble past one opponent, and then score. It is not a very used to thing, and specifically, if it's not a foreign striker. Baichung was able to do that. He actually trapped the ball. He went past one player and he pushed the ball back onto the net. So the iconic lines were that Baichung gets the ball, Baichung delays. And the moment he says Baichung delays, I remember we all were anxious that why is he delaying? Why is he holding on to? And the next moment Baichung scores. And that's when it, clashed with Novy Kapadia shouting that Baichung scores. East Bengal is up 3-1. And it was jubilation. We were everyone. My grandfather, who was I think just 80 at that point of time. I remember my elder brother was watching. Our mother were is somewhere near the drawing room, so she was also peeping in probably and trying to see what is happening on the TV. So it was jubilation. We were all shouting and jumping in the air, and the commentary really added a value. So I think these are some of the memories that I have, and there are numerous matches that Novy Kapadia has gone on to, speak about Indian football. I cannot, get into one by one what all he has done, but till the late 2010, when the I League era and the pre ISL era, I think Novy Kapadia was the single handed, voice of Indian football, commenting on every matches, be it Durant Cup, Santosh Trophy, Federation Cup back then, I League, NFL as we used to call it before. He was the go-to person, and he was the best commentator that, in my opinion, and there's a lot of memories and growing up attached to his, commenting around football in India.
Wow, thank you for taking us down memory lane, and that was some beautiful narration of the stories that you personally had about Novi. Just you mentioned that post the ISL era, and it was only till the 2010s that he was around and he was fully doing Indian football justice. Right? It's also unfair, and I feel I don't know what went wrong with the ISL officials, and of course, we all know what went wrong. But to treat someone like Novi like that, to not probably give him a ISL accreditation, but anyway, I think the loss was on the ISL's part. But there's a lot has been changed since the ISL has started, on ground, off the ground as well. And one of the key aspects that has changed is the whole Calcutta derby feels, right? Rahul, how do you look back at that? It's not been the same since ISL began. Initially, I think for a couple of seasons, Mohun Bagan and East Bengal were still playing in the I League. They did want to join the ISL, and ISL wanted them because of the whole, of course, the whole of Calcutta support out there. And then we see them come into the ISL, but there were conditions where Mohun Bagan merged with ATK, and East Bengal had to find, last minute investors to get there. How do you see with all these changes that has happened? Do you consider the upcoming derby as a legit Calcutta derby?
Well, difficult to say. I mean, on paper, yes, they call it the Kolkata Derby. On paper, yes, it's those two institutions which are over 100 years old. East Bengal formed in 1920, Mohun Bagan formed in 1889. Between them, they have over 200 years of legacy. I mean, combining them. So, yes, the institutions are there. The jerseys, the colors, the symbols and the logos are definitely taking the pitch in the ISL. But to be very honest, it does not feel right. It is definitely, ISL's way of integrating the two Calcutta Giants onto the ISL. But in that process, somewhere down the line, we lost the organic, beauty of the derby. I mean, to just give you a slice of how different derby is, with Kolkata derbies, it all starts with a build up. And when I say build up, it is not the commentators mentioning about Kolkata derby every time there's a throw in on a different match that is being telecasted live, right? So organically, the number of press coverage on the team practice sessions used to beef up just before the matches. Supporters like me would go to the grounds, and we were able to watch practice matches and practice sessions back on those days. I have done plenty of times, bunked my school with very less amount of money in the pocket, took a bus, went to the Maidans, and watched the practice from the gallery, open gallery of East Bengal ground. And then we would also walk over to the Mohun Bagan ground to see what is happening. So that is how the culture is. It is very organic in nature. It is very natural fit for the people, because they would keep a track of when there's a derby. And then the derby match is another thing. To get a ticket, get your hands to a ticket, is the next step of mission, right? So first is you're watching the match and the practice sessions as a build up as a fan, then you try to score tickets. And mind you, it is a big rush. Ideally it's 1,20,000, but it's divided equally between the two clubs. Then the priority is given to the club members. Thankfully, my family, we had a few East Bengal memberships, so we were lucky enough to have first access to some of the tickets, and I'm really privileged to have not missed a Kolkata derby for a good stretch of time till I moved out of Calcutta. So, and the journey day of how you travel to the stadium is also very different. There are these fan groups who would organize buses, sometimes open jeeps, tempos, carry people, and when they're going on the route, if they find there's a East Bengal, if there's a fan who's wearing an East Bengal jersey and waiting for a transport, they will just pick him up, and that's how it used to be. So the bus would stop, picking up different fans, unknown people, right? The only identifier is they're wearing a jersey. So the Mohun Bagan fans buses would pick up the Mohun Bagan fans, and the East Bengal fans buses would pick up the East Bengal fans. Now, when you translate that to ISL, all these is lost. So how do you justify that? And one may argue that, anyway, it couldn't have been the same because the ISL is in Goa. Well, mind you, when there used to be Kolkata derbies in a Durand Cup, which used to happen in Delhi, or a Federation Cup, which is happening in Ludhiana or Kerala, you would still find East Bengal and Mohun Bagan supporters traveling and making their presence felt on the stadium as sizable. I remember there was a I League Super Cup used to happen, and it happened in a Gurgaon stadium, Tao Devilal Stadium. The entire Delhi Bengali population was there cheering for East Bengal and Mohun Bagan. So that used to be the craze. I think with ISL being played out without any fans, I think currently that entire craze of watching the match live from the stadium has gone. Secondly, what has happened is fans don't identify with these two teams. The core fans don't do it. Mind you, the mass supporters of these two clubs are not on social media. They are not those people who are well educated, polished. They are the people who take trains from runaway places, travel 3-4 hours in the day to come and watch their favorite teams. You cannot expect them to be on Twitter or using Instagram reels. They are people who are dependent on vernacular medium, and thanks to the ISL and the new ownership or whatever, the vernacular mediums don't get access to this club. They are a corporate organization now, run by a CESC or RP Goenka group, or the Shri Cement. So it is technically the club and the colors taking the pitch, but I would still say, as a fan, that sadly I myself fail to recognize and identify this team. However, because the club will play and take the pitch, I will still continue to support. I'll probably still watch the match, follow it on social media, still be vocal about it, but it's not the same. That's how I would end it right here.
Right, and I think you've spoken for the countless number of fans, whether they are on social media or not. The emotion was put out there really well. Now, since you already touched upon, and I was supposed to come to that point, where do you see the solution as a fan, as a group of guys who are vocal about a lot of things, whether things go right or wrong? But one thing I think you guys also probably would agree, when I say you guys as the fans of both these legacy clubs, is that things were not going right, at the club, in terms of the officials holding on to their power and position, not helping the club grow professionally, in terms of whether it's the payment of the players, whether it's various other things that combines or contributes towards running a professional club. And when these investors came in, I think probably the only aspect that even probably made a player happy when ATK and MB Mohun Bagan came together was that, okay, abhi to player ko time pe paisa aa jayega, but there's still the issue is beyond that for fans, right? But so how do you see a closure or a solution to both their issues?
So both the clubs have different realities. So I have to answer it in parts, talking about each club at a time. So I think I'll start with East Bengal because that's the club I support as a child, and I've been involved in various ways. Have seen the club in and out very closely. And in fact, the day when in Calcutta, if you remember, a few months ago, there was a big protest by the East Bengal fans, when there was still an uncertainty about the agreement being signed, whether ISL will see an East Bengal featuring for them this season. I was actually there on ground, during the protest as a fan, in solidarity with my fellow fans who wanted to, basically communicate to the officials about something. So for East Bengal, the point is very simple. The thing is, no no doubt in admitting that yes, things were not going great and we needed a corporate investment and we needed privatization and we needed a definitely strong management support in the club. So when we know that we need it, my question is why is it not being happening to the full extent? If Sri Cement wanted to take over the club and control it properly, this was their opportunity, but somehow they could not arrive at a consensus. I think there were ego from both the ends. The club officials were adamant on certain trivial points into the agreement and the clauses that they had. Similarly, Sri Cement at their end also held on to their part of the bargain and not getting down on some of the points that they were hell bent upon. So when words like ego and respect and whether who's at a high pedestal, things like this come in, you can never find an agreeable solution. So right now for East Bengal, there is no certainty about next year's ISL. No one's talking about that. There's a big question mark whether Sri Cement will invest the year 3. I don't think they will invest. It's already communicated. So what happens to East Bengal after this? So I think the solution for East Bengal is very simple. We need funding, we need financing. The club officials are the reason for the mess. I say it with no remorse at all. The club officials have been there at the helm of the club for the last 2 decades. Though the early 2000s were a little bit successful, where we won the ASEAN Cup, NFL, Federation Cups, etc., we have not won any tournament of national stature for the last decade or so. The, if coaches can be sacked, the officials can also step down and let others to come in. Now the problem is that there are political implications to this. These are the people who have been in this club for a very long time, so it is not easy altogether to dethrone them and get a private body to come in. So that mess is there. But ultimately, ISL, I believe, and IMG Reliance is in a position where they can, if they want, they can actually solve this problem. But I think there is too much, political interference, too much, people with gloated egos, that this problem is not being solved. So for East Bengal, the solution is simple. The legacy officials needs to step down and bring in a fresh air. I mean, in corporate world, there are role reversals and changes every 2 years, 3 years. In football world, coaches are sacked, coaches are changed, regimes are changed. But here are these officials who are clinging on to their positions. And mind you, I am also from a family which has club membership. There were no elections held that I know of in the last 5 years. Which is, by the way, the process through which the club officials come into the power. So I don't even know why they're still there, and there were no elections, because I, as a member, never got any invitation to cast my vote. So there are wrongdoings there, and I think if there's anyone that can be solved, I think it's the institution power of FSDL who can actually solve it. And there's a big question mark to what happens to East Bengal after this season. Now coming to Mohun Bagan, I think their problem is a little bit of little bit different. In a sense, Mohun Bagan has merged with ATK, where only the football team has merged. So the Mohun Bagan athletics, cricket and hockey teams continue to be in control of the legacy officials. And that's why, the entire approach about this football team is very different, compared to what it is for any other classic, sponsorship or takeover deal. So there is a bit of, narrative issue where the current investors of ATK, the RPSG group, they want certain things to be intact. They have invested lots of money, won the league multiple times. They were one of the most successful outfits in the league by forming ATK. They had a tie-up with Atletico de Kolkata. Now they feel that what happens to all these things that we were able to achieve for the last 4 years. So that's why there is a bit of understanding issues between what the fans want is a complete identity overhaul of Mohun Bagan being the single identity, whereas the owners are fair in their point that we have built an identity too before the merger came in, which was inevitable to come for the future of football. So now I think the fans also have to get a little bit realistic, because ultimately, see, Mohan Bagan is still in a much better position. They have a long-term good investor in their, access. So there is no funding issue. Their team is doing really well. They are very successful. They're playing in the AFC. So actually, the owners were able to elevate, Mohan Bagan's status from erstwhile I League, where it used to be, to what they are currently, and they will continue to do so. Investments is not an issue. The quality foreign imports are coming in. I think fans needs to calm down a little bit for the long term and future. Sometimes, ownerships also needs to be shown that welcome. Fans venting out on owners is nothing new. I mean, the Manu fans are always having a go at the Glazer family. We have seen when Indian owners Venky's took over Blackburn Rovers, the Blackburn fans used to throw chickens at the stadium as a mark of protest against the poultry giants when they took over the Blackburn club. So that is very common. So fans are well within their rights to, protest and make their points heard. But I think in the long run, Mohan Bagan, ATK are in a better position than the mess which East Bengal is currently in.
Well, thank you again, Rahul, for that, putting it out really well. And I think, just like you probably mentioned how Noe puts it in simple words, you also did your job right in putting down in the simple words that how you probably would if a listener had to understand what is the issue happening here. But like you said, we have a game in hand, and just rightly as you mentioned earlier, that though it may not be the same old thing, and it is not the same thing, we know that, and we know what ISL is trying to portray. It's not the legit Calcutta derby, but we do have a Mohan Bagan and we do have an East Bengal going to play on the 27th. Again, I'm saying something similar what you rightly said before, that it's the colors of the team that are taking the pitch, and it may not be the same old clubs taking the pitch. But both their first outings, ATKMB had a massive win against Kerala Blasters, while East Bengal had a 1-all draw against Jamshedpur, which is also not a bad performance at all considering how they were last season. How do you go about this upcoming match? But before that, how do you rate their first game?
Well, to start off with, this 27th match is the legitimate Kolkata derby. It's still the two teams playing. Yes, there is a difference in thought process. There are certain section of evolved fans who are still not identifying with the teams properly. But for a layman and for the millions of supporters that these two clubs enjoy globally, they still identify with these two clubs. And it is people do take a lot of pride, because there are a lot of NRIs staying in the UK and US, and when they say that, oh, which is the club that you support, and they understand the fact that you cannot just support a Manchester United from Mumbai. It has to be a something similar to your region or your locality or your cause to be represented by the club. So there's a handful of Bengalis, which is millions in number, who will still tune in, give ISL the record views on this 27th when the match will happen. So that will continue to happen. If you ask me about my honest opinion about the match, I think Mohan Bagan will clearly win it. On paper and what we saw on the first match, the fact that Mohan Bagan has had a longer pre-season of sorts, right? The fact that they assembled before, I think June, July, they assembled, they played competitive matches in Maldives for the AFC Cup. So they have been together, they have been playing, the core of the team has remained the same. Whereas East Bengal is again, it's basically a team which has been again stuck together in the last couple of months after, it took the Chief Minister Mamta Banerjee to come and mediate and ensure that there is a consensus for ISL to get East Bengal to be featured this season. So again, it's a mixed bag team that East Bengal got. They primarily, for the Indian players, they did their best of what they could get all in terms of all the players who were available at that point of time. So the honest opinion is it will be a comfortable victory for Mohun Bagan, because they are in a much better position. Roy Krishna is in a good form. The last match we saw how they dominated against Kerala Blaster, even with the fact that they were not featuring their entire list of foreign players that they could have. And from an Indian players point of view also, they have got multiple Indian national team starters whereas in the East Bengal squad you will find absolutely no national team level player currently. So I think from a current scheme of things and how on paper things are, Mohun Bagan will definitely find it easy to win. East Bengal, if they can do their defensive job well, definitely they need to do well to score goals as well. I think East Bengal has some promise. From a season point of view, they have got some good players. Arindam Bhattacharya, ex ATK, I don't know how much he would be in the mood to make a point against his previous employers. He's definitely a player to watch out for. We have got some great foreigners this year. I would call it an upgrade from what we had last year. Tomislav Marcela has been good. We have also seen Antonio in the first match showing a good bit of promise. There's definitely Jackie Chan, there's Balwant Singh, Romeo Fernandez. These are players, Bikash Jairo, who have been in the ISL and played before. So East Bengal will definitely come onto the pitch with lot of promise. But ultimately, despite being an East Bengal fan, I hate to concede it that I will not be surprised if Mohun Bagan walks away with a 2-0, 3-1 kind of a victory, and I will be really ecstatic if East Bengal can at least pull off a draw.
Yeah, I mean, definitely looking forward to a great match on the weekend. And that brings us to the end of this episode. And like I started off by talking about Novy Kapadia, saying that there is no derby without Novy, and we had to start with that. And Rahul, thank you so much for putting that out really well. I think I'm sure our responsibility, all of my responsibility, that to keep his legacy going. And we would have to remind the young fans who keep tuning into Indian football that about this person, about this legend among us, who was among us. And we are just all blessed to have some connection with this legend. The last conversation I had with him was last year when he was unwell. When I wished him on his birthday, he messaged me saying that he replied saying that I am kind of unwell now, not in my best. And I said, well, we'll keep you in prayers and hopefully we see you back soon. And that unfortunately never happened. But definitely, I think looking forward is to celebrate this man's life and to keep something going. I think we all of us have a love hate relationship with Indian football. But in his own words, in an article that his dear friend and dear colleague Vijay Lokapalli sir wrote on the Hindu, this was back in 2017 September. I quote Novy Kapadia here saying that Indian football is like friends and family. I want to see it developed. I don't like anyone scoffing at Indian football. I would say, as much as we love and hate Indian football, let's continue and keep the legacy going, which that this man dearly loved. And I think for his sake, maybe we should continue doing what we are doing and do it even better. And one day, hopefully, like he said in his own words, and he was so sure about one aspect, right, which was that India is never going to play in the World Cup in his lifetime. And that's something probably I don't know if you and I will get that privilege, but in a podcast that he did with on the council, that was the last podcast that I've heard of him being very explosive, where he calls a spade, that he's like to the young fans, forget the World Cup, we have to be dominant in Asia. So I think that's something that we need to look forward to. And yeah, hopefully we did a good job, or a decent job at least, if not the best, on this episode, to pay our tribute to the legendary Novy Kapadia. And a final shout out to Vijay Lokapalli sir and to the entire group of his friends who kept visiting Novi towards the end. I'm calling him Novi because on our previous one of our shows, Pulasta mentioned that he didn't like being called so. So I'm going to respect that and call him Novy Kapadia. So shout out to Vijay sir and everyone else who went to him, who visited him towards the end and stayed with him till the end and helped him with all the other aspects. Thank you, Novi sir, or rather Novi, for all that. And I regret not saying this personally, but you were an inspiration to many. You were a legend to all of us, and you'll always be that. Thank you to all our listeners. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you so much for sharing all those inputs and insights. Guys, hope you enjoyed the episode, and do share, do let us know. You can share this episode, sharing your thoughts and your emotions that you have, memories that you have about Novy Kapadia. Thank you once again. This was a Totally Indian Football Show, and I'm your host, Siju, signing off.